Well, welcome to the August Forum of the Oregon City Business Alliance. If you remember last month, we did a panel discussion on the impacts and ramifications of residential growth, how we plan for it, how we execute it, how we can possibly improve on the processing of growth, and what are the end impacts of having that in our community, both positive and negative. And today we're going to follow it up with a panel discussion, which I'm very excited to have our guest speakers here today, on what are the impacts of jobs and employment on economic development. Are we getting the right type of workforce development in our job training? How many jobs are there that aren't being filled right now? And what is the pay scale on some of those jobs? Being in the land development and home building business, I was just reading nationally, we have a shortage, a tremendous shortage of skilled craftsmen. And every time we have a natural disaster like a hurricane or a flood, there's huge demand to go ahead and rebuild those communities, but we just don't have the workforce to go ahead and meet that demand. And I'm not sure exactly what everybody's going to be touching on today, but that might be some of the questions we have. Are the up-and-coming generation getting the skills that are going to be needed for that next generation of jobs and employment needs? So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to our infamous moderator, William, to go ahead and lead the discussion.
We've changed the format just a little bit, where we have five panelists, and each one of them is going to get 7 minutes, and we'll have a controller in the back helping them. I want to also talk about what we are not going to be focusing on today, just like last month. We are not going to be focusing on the environmental impacts of increased business to a community, and there are several, of course. Nor are we going to talk about the increased need for services such as suppliers, restaurants, and other employee amenities, hospitals, schools, and so on. Nor are we going to be talking at a great extent about the infrastructure such as housing, transportation, water, sewer, and all those STC things. Those are very important to business growth, but that's not our exclusive focus today. Also, regarding our panelists, we've chosen not to have any electeds on the panel. We don't want to politicize this. This, as far as we're concerned, is a community-wide issue that shouldn't be politicized. The other panelists that we did not invite, and maybe someday we will, are banks and the finance community, because obviously for expansion, you're going to be needing, you're going to need money. We have not included the college. We're going to be having a special session just with the college regarding their impact and influence on business growth. And other districts such as West, although we have representatives from West here, thank you very much, and first responders like fire and police. I want to give you some feedback from, you can be reading the quotes as well. I want to give you some feedback from last month's forum. Our director of community development was not able to make it last month, nor is she here today, but I showed her some of the things that we talked about last month, and the first thing that she pointed out was what she thought was a little bit of an error, and this is the, see if this works. Oh, I'm supposed to point it this way, got it. Push it harder. Push it like I really mean it. There we go. I hope some of you remember this from last month. It was the first time it had ever been seen. This is comparing the acreage due to annexation of the Oregon city limits and its population. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. She pointed out that this graph isn't true of the entire city, and she's absolutely right. It's not true of the entire city. The density is increasing in certain areas of the city. We didn't break it down so fine as to talk about which areas of the city are becoming more dense, but as a whole, the city is showing a tendency towards density unless there are additional annexations. The other thing she pointed out, there we go, takes a long time to fall over. If you remember this map from last month, but this month I'd like for you to focus on the green, not the pink. The pink was last month. That was households projected. The green is jobs. The smaller dots are an increase of over 500 jobs. The medium is between 500 and 1,000, and the large is an increase of more than 1,000 jobs. This is taken from Figure 3 of the Oregon City Transportation System Plan for growth from 2010 to 2035. Ms. Turway told me, well, those figures have been updated. So I got a hold of Tim O'Brien from Metro, and he said, well, and so he sent me a couple more slides with some more information on it. I've condensed some of these slides. There's 3 of them in the yellow. You see, that's household growth and this will be going, but this is not finalized. The growth management decision hasn't been made by Metro, and it will be in December, and then a new forecast will be distributed in 2019. Households are projected in Oregon City to go from 12,006 to 16,002 for an increase of 3,500 households. Insofar as population, growing from 33.9 to 41.8 for an increase of nearly 8,000 individuals in population. And the last one is actual employment. So employment is projected to grow from 14,000 to 22.5 for an increase of almost 8,500 jobs. That's Metro's projection. However, and this was talking about things from last time, are you losing faith in business? This is a more current perspective. So this is a results of a survey done by Deloitte. Couldn't quite figure the pronunciation on that, but they serve 4 out of 5 Fortune 500 global companies, and they're contending that people are not sticking around in their jobs very often. As a matter of fact, the green line up there, 62% are saying that they would leave a job after 2 years. That's certainly a different economy than what a lot of us grew up in. So the other highlighted thing in yellow down there, it says that 62% regard the gig economy as a viable alternative. And the first time I heard that expression, I was thinking like a geek, that gig was like gigabytes. No, that's gig like a musician or a comedian's gig, where it's temporary. What's important about that is the job and the location are decoupled. So if you have employees that are able to work from a distance, where they live and where they work may not necessarily be combined. It's a volatile situation right now. It's a volatile situation. The only thing really we're certain of is time. Time brings change, change brings disruption, and disruption can either result in death or adaptation. So with that as a backdrop, I'd like to introduce our first panelist here, who is our director of, you have a microphone there, our director of manager, economic development manager, everybody's friend, Eric Underwood. Thank you, Eric.
I try anyway. Thanks, William.
Good luck.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. It is the job of the Economic Development Department for the city to diversify and strengthen the local economy. And the primary way to do that is to attract economic growth within the community. And we take several approaches in attracting that growth. You'll see there on the slide, one of them is partnerships. I think that's the foundation of attracting the growth. And there are several levels of partnerships that we establish. One is with outside agencies, such as our partners Clackamas County and Greater Portland, Inc., which is a regional economic development entity, as well as Business Oregon, which is I'm sorry, can you hear me, everybody? Okay, all right. As well as Business Oregon, who is the state economic development department. We have these partnerships to recruit assistance whenever we need it, and just to leverage resources whenever those are needed. We also have partnerships with, it's a public-private partnership where the public entity, such as the city or the Urban Renewal Agency, would contribute some public subsidy to a certain project to get a certain project out of the ground with private developers. We also partner with community groups such as OCBA, the Chamber. Let's see, we have WorkSource Oregon and the Workforce Partnership. We partner with them to promote Oregon City and to provide and make sure that the necessary business resources are available. Another approach we take is site readiness. And so that is just an effort to get opportunity sites or employment sites as close to shovel ready as possible. We do this in several ways. They range from actually adding infrastructure to a site, to doing environmental studies, or actually constructing part of the site, maybe grading or something like that, just to get the site ready. Typically, the theory is, the sooner that a company can get product out the door, the more successful that they're going to be in your community. A couple of examples that we have in doing that is in the Beaver Creek employment area, where we've been able to provide a sewer main along Beaver Creek Road, about 700 lineal feet, to provide utilities to serve that site. And also, we've done some environmental analysis on our infill properties downtown, such as 10th and Main, which is across from Dutch Brothers, and 12th and Main, which is next to Kentucky Fried Chicken. We also work to provide incentive programs. An example of those is the Vertical Housing Development Zone, which is a property tax abatement on eligible projects. It's focused on mixed-use development. And we also have what's called the Enterprise Zone, which focuses on private investment and job creation. We also participate a lot in marketing, and that's both in hard copy marketing and digital marketing. Our goal there is to accomplish a broad range of communication with opportunities within Oregon City. Some of those examples include business lead proposals that we get from the state or Greater Portland, Inc. We put hard copy packets together and proposals together for that. We have the Land of Opportunity campaign. You might have seen the signs around town that say Land of Opportunity in our vacant infill sites. And then we have the Putting Education to Work campaign, which we're partnering with the community college on that one in the Beaver Creek employment area, marketing the opportunity for job workforce training right across the street from employment lands. Also, we do tours in the marketing. So we have an organized tour for our clients and site selectors that come into the city, and we have a lot of our partners participate in that, which is great. Gives everybody a kind of a hands-on feel of the community. And networking. You can't discredit word of mouth. That's one of the most powerful ways to market your city. And we also do direct visits with companies. So that's what I call the direct recruitment. So that includes both companies that are looking to locate within the city or companies that are looking to expand or grow. So some of the results of our efforts in attracting economic growth, I'll go over some of the larger projects that we have going on in town. Many of you are aware of the Cove project. Right now we have 244 garden-style apartments coming out of the ground in phase 1. You've probably seen it from 205. They are currently leasing up. I think that's going to be a very popular development. As not a week goes by that I don't get a call about that project and people that are interested in moving out there. Currently, we're negotiating phases 2 through 4. We're working on a disposition and development agreement with the developer. That is proposed to be up to 400 additional apartment units with some retail, restaurants, community room and park, and possibly some water habitat and restoration. A lot of you may not have heard about this project, but it's the Willamette Falls Legacy Site. It's a great opportunity that we have in our city. It's statewide attention, and it looks like I have a minute left, so I better hustle. So we're working on that one. We're proceeding toward building permits for phase 1 of the Riverwalk project, and currently we'll be working with the owner. Right now the ownership is in transition. We will be working with the owner to develop a vision for the private side development of that property. we have some things going on downtown, 10th and Main, 1220 Main. 10th and Main, there's a mixed-use development proposed for that site with residential. 1220 Main, that's our municipal parking lot. We have a hotel proposal that's coming back to that. And then we have 12th and Main, which hopefully, upon City Commission's approval, we might be sending out an RFP to make that a competitive process. There's a lot of interest in that site. And then we have a new tenant in our train depot as well, Coasters Crossing. So if you haven't had a chance to get down there and check that out, I would recommend it. And then we have our Beaver Creek employment area. That's our family wage jobs creation area. A little over 90 acres of employment lands. We're working with the property owners to market those sites. We're partnering again with the community college as well with their construction of the Industrial Technical Center. And like I said earlier, we've recently completed the sewer line to serve those sites. This has a potential of $124 million annual payroll with about 1,650 jobs. And then I am done, it looks like. So, but we also have tourism going on. If you're interested in that, I'm happy to talk to you more about tourism as well. And just real quick, I just wanted to show you the growth in the commercial investment in the city over the years. Starting in 2013, this is total building permits, commercial building permits. It also includes new buildings. In 2013, we had 72 total issued building permits for commercial projects. And in 2017 and 18, this last fiscal year, we had 189. So it just goes to show you our efforts working.
Thank you very much, Eric. There's a mechanical issue that I forgot to mention. Like last month, we are asking the audience, please, for questions to be submitted in writing. You have cards at your table. If you would be so kind as to ask them any questions you want. I mean, it's not often you get an opportunity to ask questions like this. So please write down your questions. Sherry will be coming around. Oh, there she is over there. Sherry will be coming around to pick those up and bring them to me just to make sure that we get them to reduce duplication or if somebody gets too politically out of line. And so with that piece of information, I wanted to introduce our next speaker, Cindy Moore, who is coordinator with the Clackamas County Business and Economic Development. So this is basically, as I understand it, Eric's counterpart with the county.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. Again, I'm Cindy Moore with Clackamas County Business and Economic Development. We're a division of Business and Community Services, and we provide economic development services countywide. And we were actually here as a team back in February presenting to the OCBA, so thank you for that opportunity too. But today, my focus is on how our team supports the economic development efforts of the city of Oregon City. So very much blessed to have Eric as a partner, and some of the slides that I'm going to speak to today, while they are countywide services, I want to give some examples of how we support the city specifically. So my role with our team, we're a lean team of 5. My role is specifically around business retention, expansion, and recruitment. So we are actively in the business community having conversations about connections to resources that are available. And that could be along the lines of financing for new capital investments. It could be connections to talent that a business is needing. It could be finding a location for a business. And so quite often we partner again with Eric and his team to reach out to companies in Oregon City to make sure that those connections are made. We do track all of our activity and provide annual reports to our board on what businesses are looking for. And that's really exciting because we get to see the changes that are occurring and trends that businesses are seeing, and we can actually report that information out. We manage the leads, as Eric mentioned. We have partners at the regional level and at the state level for companies who are looking to expand their presence in Clackamas County. And so when those opportunities do come in, we have a wide distribution network that we will share what those requirements are for leads and then package that information. I want to emphasize that we do focus our efforts first and foremost on the retention and expansion of our existing employers. So thank you to the employers that are in the room for the commitment that you've made to the community, and we're here to support your growth. We then secondarily field requests for information from new companies from outside of our region. And so it's really exciting to see the engagement of the OCBA and the participation level being so high, because when you have companies who are interested in relocating to a community, this is the type of activity that they look for. You know, what are your existing businesses saying? And so when we field requests from companies outside of the area, they want to talk to you. We can give them the dog and pony show, right? We can drive them around, we can show them all our sites and all our beautiful homes and our amenities and our tourism opportunities, but what's really happening on the ground? So the fact that you're here today and your commitment to overall economic development is much appreciated. Eric mentioned the enterprise zone. It's one of the incentives that we have. We have actually 5 enterprise zones across the county, and so we co-sponsor with the City of Oregon City for your enterprise zone here. We also have a strategic investment zone countywide and a rural renewable energy development zone. At this time, Oregon City is not part of the strategic investment zone, but that can certainly be a conversation in the future. We subscribe to a service for any company who is interested in connecting to resources online. It's called Tools for Business Success. And so while we focus, when I say we, it's me and Eric, but when we focus on traded sector businesses, so those that provide goods and services outside of the region or sell the products outside the region, any company who is looking to connect to resources, whether it be an entrepreneur or a startup company, can tap into the Tools for Business Success and receive those services. So William asked to speak to the areas of interest that we see from inquiring businesses. So in looking at the types of questions that we fielded over the last year, here's kind of the top fields that they're looking for. So vacant land or available buildings. We subscribe to a service called CoStar where we can run reports on properties available for sale or for lease, and we provide those reports to the city as requested. Those can also include information on trends that we're seeing, rental rates, sale rates, and such. What's the workforce like in your community? I think Lynn's going to speak a little bit to that too. Lynn, if you have not met her, please get her card. She's incredible, so you'll see that in her slides, but she's one of our great partners. Housing information. The panel that was last month was really informative and really provided good context to how we promote what the housing opportunities are and what we are in need of. What the overall business climate is. This includes things like what's happening in the newspaper, you know, new businesses that are opening up or transitions that are happening in leadership. So what's the general business climate like? And that's where we tap into organizations like yours and the Oregon City Chamber and other industry organizations. What type of incentives are available? Quite honestly, incentives aren't the first question that we receive from businesses. It is incredible to have them at the ready, and that will keep you on the list, but traditionally it's not the first question that we field. It's more along the lines of, what do you have available, ready to go? How quickly can we get in? And what's your business climate like? And then finally, transportation. And I included that it's both freight and people. So it's the ability to get your goods and services. Oregon City's done a great job in planning for transportation and growth. I think the county has done the same, but it's also around people. So we look at what's happening on I-205 and how we as employees get to work and how businesses get their employees to and from work, and that's really important. So to echo Eric's slide on partnerships, it's incredible how much we can get done together. It's not redundant services that we provide at the county to the city, it's a partnership, and we can all play a role in economic development. There's so much great work to be done, and these are the partners that are getting it done on the ground. So City of Oregon City, obviously, Greater Portland Inc. we rely on for a regional, more on the recruitment side than anything else because they have the resources to promote the opportunities that we have locally. Business Oregon from the state perspective, not only for leads, but also for infrastructure support. So if you're looking to build a road or a sewer line or anything like that for your employment sites, Business Oregon is a great resource. And then also our national site selectors. We actively engage on a national level, promoting sites that we have for opportunities that their clients might be looking for. And with that, that was it.
Excellent.
Oh, I got the slide. Thank you.
Right on time. She's watching our flag man back there. Flag services graciously provided by Pastor Mike Albin. Thank you very much, Mike, for doing that. With that, I'd like to give a little more introduction to Lynn Wallace, whose her title is Workforce Analyst for WorkSource Clackamas, but I just call her a genius. She's got more numbers than anybody could ever need, and she knows exactly what to do with them. So talk to us, please, Lynn.
Okay, good afternoon. So just kind of focusing in on Oregon City, I'm going to talk about the city's population and workforce first, and then transition into the city's industry makeup. So Oregon's population reached in 2017 over 34,600. And since 1968, I kind of had to choose a time to go back to. But the population has quadrupled in size since that time. And now it's nearly at, you added, since 1968, you added 26,000 residents in the city. So that's kind of the size of the city now. And when you talk about size, like William had talked about our density. Now this is average density per square mile. So every square mile isn't exactly like the next square mile. But this kind of shows that how the city has become more dense, even though the size of the city has grown from 3.86 square miles. That's how big the city was in 1968, to a little over 10 square miles in 2017. So that's what it is now. And since this time, the population density has grown from 2,240 people per square mile to 3,426 people per square mile. Now, when you look at the number of Oregon City residents working or looking for work, the labor force in Oregon City, it's now over 19,000 people. So within the city, there's 19,000 people in the labor force. Now this has grown by 10% since the recession. The city now has, like I said, 19,000 people working or looking for work. In 2017, 53% of the population in the city is working. So that's kind of interesting. You know, when you look at the total population in the city, over half of the city's population has a job. Now, out of those folks with a job, more of the Oregon City workforce are traveling outside the city to their jobs. Mm-hmm. So this is a trend. Less people are living and working in Oregon City, and more people are living and traveling outside of the city to their jobs. Of those workers who traveled outside the city to work, nearly 87% of the city's workforce had jobs outside the city in 2015, which was up from only 82% in 2003. So currently, and this is the latest data, the census has pretty lagged data, but this is the latest data I could find, 13% of the workforce in Oregon City both live and work in the city. And that was down from almost 18% in 2003. So I don't know what the reason is for less people, you know, less opportunities. I don't know, more opportunities outside. That would be maybe something that the economic development folks could look into and see why that is happening. So the largest number of Oregon City workers had their jobs outside the city. They went to Portland, almost a little under a third went to Portland. 13% went to Oregon City, worked and lived. 4% went to Tigard, Beaverton 4%, Tualatin 3%, Milwaukee 3%, Lake Oswego 2%. So you can kind of see how they're going all over the Clackamas County area. So now we'll kind of look at industry makeup. What does the industry look like in Oregon City? The major growth engines are highlighted in red, and during the last 15 years, the engines of growth have been accommodation and food services, government, healthcare and social assistance, and retail trade. These industries made up 90% of all the job growth in Oregon City, and they added 2,300 jobs. Oops, losing it again. Now this is current employment. This is what employment and industry employment in the city looks like. This is covered employment. This does not include entrepreneurs with no employees. It was in 2017, it was at 15,837. That's how many jobs there were within the businesses in in Oregon City. And there were over 1,300 employers. When we look at the current industry employment, we see that 4 out of the top 6 industries in 2017, local government, healthcare, retail trade, accommodations and food services, private education, and construction, were the same industries that had the most job growth during the last 15 years. When we compare Oregon City's job growth with the other cities in Clackamas County, that's how Oregon City stands up. Oregon City is the yellow striped. Within the last 15 years, Oregon City had the 4th highest increase in jobs at 2,567, but it had a lower than average job growth rate at 19%. So that's what the other cities have been doing the last 15 years. And then lastly, when we compare the number of new employers, these are not all businesses that come in. These are businesses that have employees and have covered employment. The cities that added more than 300 new employers since 2003 included Oregon City, Lake Oswego, West Linn, and Wilsonville. Oregon City has added 315 businesses since 2013, which is a 32% growth rate. That's all I have. Okay.
Excellent. Sounds like we're doing pretty good. Hands up, who thinks we're in a growth economy? Yeah. Keep your hands up. How many think we're going to stay that way forever? So we need to be ready. And it's my pleasure now to introduce Steve Wells, who is the Senior Managing Director of Trammell Crow Commercial Realty. And it would be, just like last month, we had a developer who was talking about building houses and so on to accommodate our growth. Steve, what can you tell us about accommodating business growth?
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, let me give a quick introduction to our company. We're a 70-year-old real estate developer founded in Dallas. We operate in 16 major cities through the U.S. We do lots of different types of development: office, industrial, multifamily, medical, and retail. Not very much, probably least of those is retail, and residential is fairly new. No single family, just apartments. We're a big company. We do, and mostly fairly large projects. We've got about $10 billion of real estate, so it is a growth business right now, in development or completed but not sold yet across the U.S. And we've got nearly $750 million in our in-process and pipeline just in Portland. We've operated here since the 70s. We're very active right now in Clackamas County. We haven't been as much in previous years, but that's where the land availability has moved for us. So we've got a 280,000 foot warehouse project off of Jennifer in Clackamas County. And that's under construction about a year from being finished. We've got a lot of land tied up in Canby for industrial development and chasing 600, 800,000 square feet of user-driven development there, and are looking at going speculatively, which means without tenants. We aren't in Oregon. We have poked around on land in Oregon City. I want to talk to Eric a little bit more about Beaver Creek. Nice to be here and learn about that. And we're about to start our first local apartment project in Clackamas County in the Lake Oswego area. So we are active. And on the industrial side, which I think is, for us, industrial is mostly distribution. It's the low end of the job scale on industrial, but it's critical to the functioning of our economy as you move into more manufacturing and light. And we go into the light industrial side of the business. We don't do heavy industrial. It's not something that investors buy and sell. So it's hard for us to, and it's very specialized. So we don't operate in that business as much. So the growth factors. One of the questions was, what growth factors do we look for on the development side? There has to be adequate demand. Good demand, not too much supply, available land. The land has to be acquirable at a good cost, which is becoming more and more difficult. Capital has to be interested in it. Construction costs are a huge problem right now, but the costs have to be manageable. And then governmental constraints, and in industrial, they come in a big way. So. For industrial in particular, the growth boundary makes a big difference because they're big scale projects. Other things like inclusionary housing don't affect that. Permitting and restrictions and incentives such as enterprise zone do make a difference. I won't go through all these except to say that hotels, office are small land users, and so they're easy to find land for. As you get into retail and single-family homes and then ultimately industrial, large-scale land needs a lot of infrastructure to serve them, and so it's hard to find sites to do industrial. And I would say that right now, 5 years ago, industrial land scarcity was the talk of every town. Now it's sort of not the talk of anybody's town. The various, like in Portland, the Prosper Portland and the Port, who have been actively involved, have gone from placemaking probably 10 years ago to economic development 4 or 5 years ago, and really are focused on social equity and housing shortage issues and things right now. So if you can go to the next slide. The sympathy of public aid. I'm going to talk a little bit more about industrial because it's I think the most challenging land thing. The sympathy of public agencies to the shortage is declining rapidly, and the difficulty and the severity of the shortage is going up at the same time. A big part of our problem, if you look at 2010 through 2018, the blue line is average construction, and look what happened after the Great Recession. We built just next to nothing. And our market was very slow, but it has become very active. Next slide, please. We're now about 4% vacant. We'll finish 6 million feet this year. 75% of that is already leased. And some of that is some unusually large transactions. Until 3 years ago, there had never been an 800,000 foot industrial deal in Portland. There's now been 5. We've been fortunate to be involved in the majority of those. 3 big Amazon deals, including one in Salem, a big postal service deal that moved the post office out of downtown to the airport and freed up a massive redevelopment on its way in downtown, and a big Subaru project that we did out in Gresham. Okay, so these were, a few years ago, these sites were the last large, ready-to-go, 6 months away from development, industrial sites in the metro area. And if you keep scrolling through, the red lines will keep chopping them off of the deal until we get to the next slide. Basically, they're almost all in play at this point. I wanted to just go through a couple of buildings we've done. So in Canby, for instance, one of the places we're looking where we can find industrial land is in Canby. There's a city there that wants it. They have already served property, And so we've got over 100 acres tied up there and are working to try to bring that into development immediately. The soils are good, which is a big issue with us. And so industrial, it's what everybody wants to do on the capital side. The Amazon and e-fulfillment issues have added on to a normally robust business anyway, and sort of put it into hyperdrive. And I think the pay is getting better because it's very difficult to find workers. It's a business that is really important to the city. So if I could lastly just buzz through a little bit of a commercial, but these 4 projects, Subaru, Amazon, Colwood, the 2 Amazon projects, all required public involvement. 3 of them were on port-developed properties, Port of Portland. They almost all require enterprise zone benefits, and there's almost always help needed to get sewer and infrastructure out to the projects. And so we're excited to try to work through the challenges of continuing to bring industrial to the property, to the communities. And I think that's it for us. Getting the flag.
Thank you, Steve. You've got my head spinning. Last and certainly not least, we want to get somebody who's actually in the trenches. We have a significant employer here, a business owner, Doug Ford, who is the president of Optimized Technology, and my suspicion is not a lot of you are familiar with it, and I'm not going to pretend that I even understand what on earth they do. It's geeky even for me, but I love the fact that he's growing, and that speaks well of Oregon City, and it speaks well of his work as well. Doug Ford, would you like to tell us what you're doing over there and how it is that you're growing, and what does that impact have on employment?
Okay, thanks. As William said, I'm with Optimized Technologies. My wife and I started it 33 years ago in 1985, and we've been in Oregon. Is my mic working? Okay. And we've been in Oregon City for about 23 years now. And we make everything here. We design everything and make everything. And we market throughout the world. We're in 60 countries. So just to give you a little idea, those are the components that we make. They don't mean anything to you at this stage, but I'll try to hopefully explain so that you can see what our business does. And to understand what we do is also to understand the growth opportunities and the industries that we serve. So if we were to take a look at 3 chemicals that are in the news a lot these days, we have glyphosate, which is Roundup. We have BPA, bisphenol A, which is plasticizers in most plastics. And we'll take a look at cannabis industry, the marijuana. So if we take these 3 compounds, they're all quite different. If we were to, say, grow marijuana in a field that had Roundup sprayed on the weeds, and we take that product and put it into a plastic container, we would end up with each of these different compounds. So the trick is, how do we separate and quantify those? Well, we use a technique called mass spec. We use liquid chromatography to separate these, and we use mass spec to tell us which compounds we have. So if you think of a Brita filter as a way of filtering drinking water and getting the contaminants out, we'll take our beaker there on the left, and we've got all 3 compounds in there, and let's say we boiled it in water, and we pour it into the container. Then what's going to happen is the Brita filter is a charcoal activated carbon filter, and it's going to retain all of those chemicals. So it's a good idea to filter your drinking water like this and take out some of these things. But the other thing you have to think about is if you were to keep using that filter too long, pretty soon those compounds will work their way through. So what we do is we make little tiny cartridges that have 2-micron size particles in them, and they retain chemicals like this. And we don't just do it at gravity pressure, we do it at 20 and 30,000 psi. So we push these things through really fast, they get retained, and then that's the way we can we can look at them. Now, if you look at the scale on the right, that's to represent a mass spec. What a mass spec does, you may be familiar with particle accelerators and things like that, but that will show you what the mass of each of these different compounds are. So let's say we put them through. We can see what the molecular weight of each of these compounds ends up being, and you can see on the left we have glyphosate, the BPA, and the THC. They all came out separately, and they all give us a molecular weight, which is listed on the scale there. Okay, so the projects and partners, we've worked with NASA. We've done the urine analyzers looking for metabolites in the urine while the astronauts are in space. We've worked on a project, the iKnife, which is quite an interesting tool. It uses a mass spec application where you will take a knife to cut a tumor out, and as long as the knife is showing you a green color, you're cutting out the cancerous tissue. When it turns to red, it means you stop, and now you're into the healthy tissue. So that allows physicians to take care of the tumor right on the operating table rather than having to take it over and put it under a microscope and examine to see if it's cancerous tissue or not. Now the next example is Ebola. We made all the trapping cartridges that Emory University used to look at the different compounds that the proteins that the people were missing in their body, and in order to fight the disease. And then they augmented those, and we know the rest. It was a successful effort to heal the people that had the Ebola virus. Protein analysis. We work with, if you remember, the Chinese were putting melamine in milk products, trying to fake us out, and so that we would think that they had a higher protein content. Well, we went back and examined those through LC mass spec, and we can see that it was melamine and not proteins. And then the Salem water problem, we looked at, we went down, they use LC mass spec and products like ours to look at the cyanotoxins in the drinking water. The market that we're in is an $8 billion market for the LC mass spec that serves all those industries on the right. That's a $4 billion industry. So it's big and it's growing, and you can see this is where we're going with medicine and with future technology in these areas. The biodefense, we also made a device that would detect anthrax on the battlefields. So at a glance, you can see that we manufacture here in Oregon City everything. We have state-of-the-art machining, and we're adding on to our facility right now. We'll be adding another 8,000 square feet. We sell throughout the world. It's an Oregon company from the very start, and we hold over 15 current patents. And I can just show you one of the shows you that the intellectual property is how we grow, and that's what's important. Engineers, the best machinists we can find, and the CAD, CAM, all of that is important to what we do. And intellectual property allows us to manufacture these parts here on our own terms, our own specification, and gives us total control of our market segment. And if you ever watch CSI, you'll see lots of LC mass spec in use. They are always in the lab, have the instrument, and putting a needle in, injecting something in. So, thank you.
Wow. After we pick our chins up off our table, that's pretty astonishing work that you do, Doug. You mentioned also that you are expanding your plant now. Can you tell us a little bit about that expansion?
Yes, we're adding 8,000 square feet, and what that'll do for us, we will bring in more employees, but most important for us, we look at how we can expand with new technology. So we're adding state-of-the-art machines, which of course will pay more personal property tax to the county or the city. And so we look at ways to do it with technology and higher priced employees. So we're really lacking in machinists in the Clackamas County area. The machinists that we're looking for they have to know computers, because most machining now is computer driven. And so that's the challenge for us, is always to get good employees there. Engineers, most of our employees do not live in Oregon City. They commute in from all the way from Corbett and Vancouver and Beaverton. So they come in from quite a few areas.
That's great. Thank you very much. There's a lot of interest in what you folks are doing. There's a lot of interest in it. I thought a particularly interesting one that got my attention, and I guess it's to all of us, is that while the millennial statistics that I showed earlier in my presentation show how they approach career and work, the millennials come from Fortune 500 companies. Less than 20% work in the large companies. 50% work in small businesses, less than 100 employees. Both millennials and the new Gen Z prefer small business. How can we best support growing smaller businesses and grow jobs? Because so often, I think when we talk about growing businesses, we're talking about big businesses. But the fact of the matter is, smaller companies employ a lot of people as well. Does anybody want to take a stab at that? Cindy, you look interested?
That is a great question, and entrepreneurs are an awesome foundation for any local economy, and we have an amazing resource in the Small Business Development Center. So if you haven't already visited or spoken with Rob Campbell, he's the executive director for our local Small Business Development Center. Their partnership with Clackamas Community College and the Small Business Administration, they offer courses for entrepreneurs and existing small businesses to enhance their next moves and basically just make sure that they are set up for success. And Rob tells stories all the time about how companies come in with great ideas, and some materialize into companies, and others it's just a great conversation, because sometimes not starting a business is a good plan for them too. So SBDC, I think, is an amazing resource.
This might build on that. It says, as we forecast increased jobs in the next 5 to 10 years, or Lynn, maybe you want to take this, how do we split these between new businesses opening up and versus businesses growing and adding employees? If we're talking about increased employment, how much of that is new employment?
Well, every 2 years we do projections, and we've been fairly accurate over the years. We do industry projections broken down by major industry, and we also do occupational projections for over 700 occupations within industries. So, sometimes just kind of looking at that and seeing what we project for the next 10 years. So we update every 2 years. So we kind of go back and kind of benchmark and see how things are going, and then we do our new projections. We just got done doing projections a month ago. So the closest projections for Oregon City would be for the Portland Tri-County, Clackamas, Washington, and Multnomah counties. But I also want to mention on the previous question that as far as number of businesses in Clackamas County, there are over twice as many non-employers than businesses in Clackamas County. And these non-employers can someday be employers. They're entrepreneurs, and as their business grow, they may need to hire people. So there's a lot of potential there for employment growth.
Good point. And this is probably a follow-up for you as well. It says, if the Clackamas County offices had not moved to Oregon City, I think that we're talking about the consolidation of a lot of the offices moving up to the campus up top there, how much would this impact your job growth numbers? That is to say, how well would Oregon City growth look without Clackamas County as an employer in Oregon City? The county is growing as well.
The county was, government was the top employer for 2017. They had the most jobs. But I don't know if you know, you're still moving within Oregon City, right? They're still going to be in Oregon City, so I don't see what difference that would make. But for Oregon City, local government, because local government is in you know, economic development, and Clackamas County is in Oregon City. It's a big driver for employment, and their employment numbers, I don't know offhand, but they've gained a lot of employment since the last 10-15 years. They've added a lot of employees.
Okay. I have one directly for Steve, if you want to pass the mic over there. It says, Steve, how do you view UGBs with respect to the balance of livability and building opportunities? Nothing political about that.
I think it really does depend on the product type. I think for livability, it does keep things dense, and Portland and the whole Portland metro has been on the forefront nationally of sort of returning to an urban center really since the 70s. They've been way ahead. It does make it more expensive. I think we've seen that just today it said that Hillsborough, Wilsonville, Beaverton, and Tigard are coming in for expansions on the single family and residential side for the next UGB expansion round. The industrial, so I think it does challenge single family housing prices quite a bit, and probably apartments as well. I think it is becoming a big issue for industrial, from everything from distribution up to large scale manufacturing. There are, the last UGB round put 300 acres in Damascus, which got no infrastructure and no support and never developed a single acre really of the industrial. The biggest land availability for industrial is really out in Hillsborough, which has become more and more of a distribution market, but it's not typically. And then Canby and Woodburn each have their own urban growth boundaries, so they're not really constrained. They're constrained by their own, but not by the metro urban growth boundaries. So it really depends. I think for large scale retail, it can become an issue because you just need a lot of land. Some things require more land than others. You can build a downtown office building on an acre, or a residential project on a half acre if you want to. So it's not a big land issue. There's plenty of land.
I have a follow-up on that from someone else. It says, what factors which local government can influence, that's the important thing, that local government can influence, are most helpful in bringing commercial properties to completion?
Well, I mean, first of all, you have to be in the right place, and all those other things that are not.
Yeah, we can't quite control.
Yeah, you
all
can't
of that.
change where you are. Which there's good things about where Oregon City is, and things that, as always, don't compete as well. But I think the thing that governments can do best. I mean, in industrial, for instance, you have to have for bigger development, you almost have to have an enterprise zone because most of the competitors do. It's a little hard to see how that goes as we run out of land. But I think the best thing is just to be business friendly. I think of Gresham and Hillsborough. It used to be Hillsborough, but now I would say Gresham is the #1 business friendly municipality that we've dealt with. They make it quick. They're there to get your projects done. They want to, of course, follow their rules and do what they can, but they're trying to do everything they can to be customer service oriented.
So it's attitude.
Yeah, attitude's huge, and it comes from the mayor down. And it infuses the entire workforce. Canby, we see a lot of the same things. Very business friendly, wants to see development in their community, and so I think those are the most important things.
Okay, thank you. There's no way we're going to get through all these questions, but I'll try here. Eric, why is Oregon City not a member of the Strategic Investment Zone? Or do you know?
Well,
And can you tell us what the Strategic Investment Zone is?
so the strategic investment zone, I think it takes an investment of over $100 million or more to qualify for, I think it was tax abatements, 15 years for tax abatements. From what I understand, this was discussed prior to my time being here, but I believe it was from the top down that was not a welcomed program at the time. Maybe it wasn't understood. But it's something we can certainly address in the future.
Okay, and a follow-up to you on that. Tourism, large source of spending on local small business per tourist. With the Riverwalk project on the horizon, is Oregon City looking to increase hotel rooms? And yes, we are, right? We've got a couple on the horizon.
So you wanted a brief answer, and the answer is yes.
Yes, okay, that's good, that's good. And then, Steve, how significant have wetland challenges impacted industrial land supply, and how have you dealt with the issue? And I had written down a question about land costs in Clackamas County as opposed to the rest of the Portland metro area.
Yeah, wetlands are a big factor throughout the Portland metro. If you're outside of the central city, we had to move a wetland to accommodate the post office at Colwood. We have wetlands that had been moved to make way for the Amazon facility in Troutdale. The port did that, we didn't. And of course out in Rivergate, where Amazon went, that was all land that was created from dredge spoils that the Portland did 30 years ago probably. So wetlands it's hard to have a big 20-acre parcel in our climate and not have some of it get wet. And it's become increasingly difficult to mitigate even low quality wetlands that are, at Colwood we had an acre wetland in the middle of the 40 acres. And it was a golf course pond because we were making
Water hazard.
Yeah, it was a water hazard. So what was the second part of the question?
Where were we? Oh, land costs in Clackamas County.
Yeah, so
Making
land costs
it more attractive?
have been, are they going to get more attractive? Depends on whether you're buying or selling, I guess. But land's getting expensive. It hasn't quite gotten as high in Clackamas. In the northeast market, in the close-in northeast around downtown, we've now seen some industrial sales at $20 a foot. Previous to 3 years ago, probably $7 or $8 was the high. So, and we haven't seen it nearly as badly as some other markets where industrial prices have tripled and quadrupled in the last few years.
Thank you. Lynn, from the 4 industries that had the most growth, what would you say the average wage was? And comparing that, is this higher or lower than 10 years ago? So we're talking about wages now, not just number of jobs.
Well, I'd have to look that up, average wage, but the last analysis I did of in Clackamas County average wage, has been increasing the last 5 years, but when you factor in inflation, it's barely staying even. So, we're just barely keeping up with inflation.
Okay, Cindy, this one was addressed to you. So last month we heard from a land developer that it takes about 30 months to take a parcel of land through the entitlement process to receive building permits. On average, how long does it take for a commercial or industrial zoned parcel to go through the same process, and what do you believe to be the existing inventory of permit-ready employment land in Clackamas County? Steve might be interested in the question too.
Maybe a two-part question. So thank you for the question. Each project is going to be specific, right? So it's going to be a variety of factors. I can tell you that at the county level, through Catherine's leadership as our manager of business and economic development, we implemented a business response team. So what that does is brings the department director for development and transportation. We also engage our building permit department, our building codes administrator. We'll bring in people from West when needed as well to talk about projects and get ahead of a project schedule. So we do our best to try and mitigate any type of red tape that we can, again, following Gresham's awesome model of not, cutting anything, but making sure that we can be as responsive as we can be to get projects off the ground as quickly as possible.
But you don't have an average month of how long it would take
They're so
different.
I think it'd be hard to say because everything's going to be so different. To give an exact example.
Well, I want to bring Doug back into this loop and ask, because you're in the middle of a growth right now, how did that process go? You're adding 8,000 square feet. How was that process for you?
It was cumbersome. It's taken us well over a year and a half probably to get our permits. And the planning department, I think it's in Oregon City, has had turnover, and it wasn't a smooth process at all.
But it seems like it's reached some conclusion now.
Well, we're there. Or I believe we're there. We're getting close. We still have, some things I was talking to Eric about. There's some issues that still are not resolved.
Devil's in the details, right?
Yeah.
I had a question, maybe for the three public service folks here, about an emphasis on jobs. Do you see an emphasis on manufacturing? Because I think everybody likes to talk about manufacturing, and as Steve was pointing out, not as much emphasis on retail. So how do you recruit that when you're talking about not just the number of jobs but the wages for those employees? Do you have an emphasis on manufacturing?
That is one of our target industries that we have, which is consistent with the county's targeted industry. So we do aggressively try to recruit manufacturing. Especially in our Beaver Creek employment area, we have 6 targeted industries, which include the advanced manufacturing, high-tech, agriculture and food production, food and beverage processing, professional and business services, and software and media production. So yes, and we are, with those targeted industries, we have that plan in place. And so, you know, if we have a business or a company that fits within that, then we're able to provide probably programs and resources for that to heavily recruit that business.
You had mentioned earlier that that you and the county, or the city and the county, have a partnership with the enterprise zone. There's a county partnership. Does that come with any money from the county?
No, it doesn't come from, there's no money.
Other than staff time?
Just staff time, yes.
Okay, so there's no financial?
No financial.
It's all up to the
Right.
city to do that?
Correct.
Okay. Cindy, if an Oregon City business offers a service that might be helpful to businesses looking to expand or relocate in the area, that's kind of like another incentive, how do we apply to be listed on Tools for Business Success or other resources that the county uses?
I think we would definitely be open to that conversation. We look for any resource that would be helpful to businesses. While as a public entity, none of us can do direct referrals, but we can certainly provide information on service providers that are in our area.
Okay. I have to be respectful of the audience's time and your time as well, and I apologize for those folks that submitted some pretty intriguing questions that we're not going to have time for. I want to point out that we have contact information for all these individuals and sources for some of the statistics on the overheads that I had. If you want any of that information, you can send an email to membership at ocbusinessalliance.com. That'll get to us.
Well, first of all, on behalf of the Oregon City Business Alliance, we want to thank each and every one of you for coming today. Just like last month, such a wealth of information that you shared with us, and we could only get that by being here and listening to your presentation. So we really thank you very much, and we look forward to continuing to have a dialogue with each and every one of you in the weeks, months, and years ahead. So we appreciate that. So as I shared at the beginning, we really have a shortage of skilled craftsmen, and there's so many jobs out there if you have certain skills. And I know that's one of the things that each and every one of you in the public service area are working on now, to match up the needs with the training to go ahead and meet that long-term demand that's going to be there. So with that being said, hats off to another delicious meal to the Abernathy Center and for allowing us to use your facility. Thank you for coming.